Good evening, viewers. This is your host, once again coming to your homes with another program, Mazungumzo. This is part three, excuse me, of the program Being on Time. We have gone through part one and part two. Now we're in part three. And Martin Heidegger is difficult. So you bear with me. Let's go through the notes, and those who will understand, make advantage of Nene, use it for their own, might be understanding of higher things or even lower things, or just add their knowledge. That's better. My name is Dr. Gilbert Gicharu Githere, and I try to kind of help people in especially narrow topic for doctorate programs, or when you're looking for a good master's program and you're looking for narrow topic. Somebody like Martin Heidegger in his book of Being on Time is really on the spot on what actually is a narrow topic. And this is what I'm going through, because in discussing being, he uses the word entities. And actually entities, if you pick entities in your narrow topic, that's when you'll be on the money, because entities are the real things. They are the ones which actually Dasein himself is looking for to exist on this world. Once he has those entities with a certain being which agrees with him, then being is able to survive. And a good example, just to remind you, just by passing, Dasein is like a magic wand. It helps Martin Heidegger navigate the issue of being. That's what it does. It's like a magic wand. It's like when you see effects in a movie. They create effects with things they have discovered. They're like magic wands, and they make you wow. Dasein is one of the items that Martin Heidegger uses to unravel the issue of being. At this point, we are going to turn to two characteristics of Dasein, and these are existentia, and this is drawn from the word existence. And the other one is essentia, from essence, the essence of things, the essence of entities. So those are words that Martin Heidegger uses. Existence must be there for you to be able to decipher being and its entities. It's very important. Remember that here Dasein, in these two states, acquire the stages of mind, because Dasein is himself. Dasein is himself. It's you. When Martin Heidegger picks the word Dasein, it means you. Understanding is what allows Dasein to tell which entities belong to it. Because Dasein is like in the environment, he's in the duty of collecting the entities which will help him survive. Because the world is a survival for the fittest. But Martin Heidegger refers to Dasein's ability to be in this worldhood, in the world, and experience it. He uses the word existence. That's what Dasein requires. When Dasein, he identifies the entities that belong to it, and all this must come from the essential existentiality of its existence. This is Dasein's proximal characteristic, and it is associated with its characteristics of everydayness. That's a very good word Martin Heidegger bestows us, everydayness. We call this everyday undifferentiated character of Dasein averageness. He is in this averageness to be in this environment, in the world. Martin tells us the importance of Dasein's characteristic of average everydayness in its daily existence. These characteristics is very close to Dasein, yet at the same time, it is very far. This dialectics, because also Martin Heidegger deals with very much issues that Hegel dealt with in the phenomenology of spirit. In studying consciousness, Hegel uses dialectics. That one characteristic, the characteristic of Dasein you see there in the real being, it is very close to itself, but at the same time, it is very far to itself. That's a very interesting point. That's what dialectics is all about. And that's what Hegel deals with when he's dealing with the issue of phenomenology of spirit. But Martin Heidegger doesn't want to go into the issue of trying to decipher consciousness. Martin Heidegger is actually wanting to deal with the issue of being, because he says in the Western philosophy or Western intelligentsia, very few people have dealt with the issue of being. Like Descartes, he deals with I think, so I am. And Immanuel Kant, in his book, the Critique of Pure Reason, he just also goes through how humans acquire knowledge, or how they acquire consciousness, because consciousness is actually relevant to knowledge also, or understanding. So even the Greek scholars ignore the issue of being. When one analyzes Dasein existence structure in its average everydayness, the result is explicata. Explicata, I think, is a Greek word. It means to explain in detail. But this one you can go into because it might have other very internal meanings. The daily fleeings and struggles of Dasein are defined in terms of existentiality, and they are given in the name existentialia. Martin tells us very clearly not to confuse existentialia with categories. Though categories are made up of entities, these entities are not those associated with Dasein. Entities that are associated with Dasein are those that let things be seen in themselves. Ability to explain the self. That's an interesting word. Being able to go and explain the self. Entities that are associated with Dasein are those that let things be seen and explain them. Kant, in his writings, calls these things conscience, court of justice. When entities are questioned about transit value, they are taken to task in court of public opinion. That is to say, letting everyone see it in its being. So you see, Kant touched on the issue of entities. Itself in itself. So actually, consciously, when a human being learns the self, he goes internally and through struggles, dialectics, it questions, who am I? Who am I? You can only get to Dasein when you go, who is Dasein? What is Dasein can't help you. Who is Dasein is the question you must ask to understand Dasein. Existentialia and categories are the two basic possibilities for characters of being. The entities which correspond to them require different kinds of primary interrogation respectively. Any entity is either a who. When you deal with Dasein from the question of who, you're actually asking him, how do you exist? How do you survive the worldhood in your everydayness? How do you survive this world existence? How do you exist? Or categories, when you're dealing with categories, people understand the categories, It's like classification of botanical things or items. What? The what answers the presence at hand in the broadest sense. Now, let's say an artist is looking at a log, a huge, beautiful log. Within the log itself, there is a beautiful statue. Within the log, there is a beautiful statue. But when you're looking at a log and you are not an artist, what you're seeing, you're either seeing a stone and nothing else, or you're just seeing a log. But within the log, an artist can bring out a very beautiful statue. That statue within the log, it is in a state of presence at hand. Presence at hand. Just you got to digest that one. Existential analytic is a method just like anthropology, psychology, biology. All these methods have tried to analyze entities that make up being. The investigation that have been done by anthropology, for example, and the other subjects I've mentioned, have not done a good job because they have taken the route of asking, what is an entity? And I told you, if you want to lose your way, you ask the question, what, to understand being. You can't do that. You'll get lost. You got to use the word who. For example, René Descartes, the famous French philosopher, he came up with a statement, we think, so we are. And that's why we are not animals, because we think. You can see humans, to survive, they think about how to solve their problems. Like if they want to increase production in the land, they use irrigation. That's an innovation. And they think, but you have never gone into the forest and seen elephants have irrigated the land so they can produce more trees. They depend just on natural things of nature for survival. But human beings are different. So this study of life, or the study of life, person, man, I, subject, soul, experience, or intentional acts, consciousness, has always left out the idea of personal being. All those things have been studied. They've been studied in depth. I'm just trying to check the time. They have been studied in depth, but they haven't looked into the idea of being. The the concept of being in many Western scholars until Martin Heidegger deciphered and unraveled the issue of being. I said before, it was considered as self-given, self-evident, is self-explanatory, because it was more religious, very, very revered, so nobody really touched the issue of being, to be. Because there has to be a definition of what is to be. But when you look at a man and you take the word existence, and then you look his struggles through life to survive, and then you use the and to study things like any study that you do with your narrow topic, you have got to evolve or bring in techniques that were evolved by other scholars before you in order to get into the essence of things and to get into the really tacit points, the finesse points of knowledge when you're doing analysis. You got to bring in phenomenology. It's a study of phenomena. Then you go to when you bring in phenomenology, it's also like I just said before, Dasein is like a magic wand. It's just like reason and logic. So if you use logic, you'll get to the answer of a problem. If you reason out, you will get into the tacit points of very fine, essential points of any topic. So phenomenology, in discussing Dasein and his existence, existential, and his facts, you use phenomenology. And then you have got to look at Dasein through the eye of existence. You can never understand Dasein when you use phenomenology if you don't use existence. You have got to use existence. Who is surviving? Who is Dasein as he tries to exist? And you must realize that these things were also very sensitive, because the Judeo-Christian religion monopolized knowledge and ideas. I don't mean it's bad. It is that time of Galilei. So when you really touch on things like being, they also rubbed on the religion. So they became like a no-no to most of the scholars, because you could be excommunicated. And when you're excommunicated in those days, it was serious. You're labeled. And in society, when you're labeled, and power has the power to use labels. So many people, the issue of being, before Martin Heidegger touched it in the 17th century and onwards, when he gave lectures on Freisberg, it has not been touched by many people. So he went into it as a narrow topic. That's why I'm telling you, if you're doing your doctorate, being and time, you will see how somebody unravels a narrow topic. Because it's two words, being and time, the shortest sentence you can ever make. And then he goes into it and writes a book of about 200 pages for you to understand what is being. Now, at this point, I'll also touch to say René Descartes, Max Gilbert, René Descartes, Henry Bergson, Max Scheler. These are great scholars of philosophy in the Western concept. And even people like Molefi Asante in his Afrocentrism, Lucia's outlaw, Kwame Appiah. Not many of them have dealt with the word being, really, and digested it to help Martin Heidegger. I'm not just saying this. Other scholars have just said, even many of us have not really dealt to expound on the issue of being. We have just left it to theologians. It's their Kuliana, their main idea. So I'm just saying, all these individuals and all who studied different subjects, they didn't deal with the idea of being. Like, for example, the person who tackled by Scheller, it deals with that through, it has intentional acts, non-sequential. And he says these are no objects. He concludes man exists for performance of intentional acts. So many scholars have dealt with intentional acts when they deal with human beings. They are there, a human being is there. He is surviving or he is struggling, and all that he is doing, his kuleana in Hawaiian actions, they are all intentions. And that's the biggest point they make, like Scheller, intentionality. It is also important to say categorically that anthropology, psychology, and biology do a very good job about life, but they fail to bring in the entities that entail personal being. So I'm just kind of, throwing these ideas out there, just so that you can understand what's his being. Now, you see, Martin Heidegger, in this analysis, he brings in, for you to understand, entities with a being. And he gives a good example of a hammer. You see, a hammer is a very essential tool in the existence of Dasein. Because if you're going to put up a beautiful shelter out there for you to live in, when it's cold, when it's hot, all these kind of things for you to survive in it, you go to use a hammer. But a hammer is not something you kind of take it and say, I'm picking a hammer. Let us build a house. No. A hammer is just something you pick and you use it. You are not even thinking. You are thinking of very many other things, but you're using the hammer. Now, I wouldn't go very far from this point because it's good to let you digest what I have said. Call this part 3. Digest it, look at it, and try to follow me and subscribe, comment about it. Because Dasein, there is another thing that Dasein has, being in the world. Dasein can never exist or have existence if he is not in a world. That is his niche and habitat. And you can see how Martin Heidegger is deep in analyzing the entities that have got a being that are necessary for this existence of Dasein. So I'll stop there. I'll continue, and I hope some of you people I know are following. I'll stop there, and we will continue later. My name is Dr. Gilbert Gicharu Githere. This is Mazungumzo coming to your homes. This is the third part of Being on Time. I hope you have enjoyed it. Until then, when we meet again, ciao, ciao.